Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. My name is Rabbi David Barnett, and just in case anyone is tuning in to this service for the first time, you never know. It does become a matter of record of posterity on the internet. This is Congregation Beth Am of Longwood, Florida. I'm very honored to be the rabbi here. I've been with Congregation Beth Am for 1 calendar year, actually about 11 months, and this is now going to be actually the last time I will be here for a little while at least, or maybe longer, but it's been such an honor to serve here as the rabbi of Congregation Beth Am. We want to thank in advance Tom Mayer, and I want to thank in particular Jason from the Life Point Church, who is here. I wish you could see him wave, but wave to me, Jason. There we go. I can assure you he waved. He's live, and he is tremendously helpful for helping us get our services going here, and we appreciate it so much. We are going to be having a rather abbreviated service this morning, but nonetheless, we will start very traditionally with the blessings. I hope you like that accent. Page 65 with the Birchot HaShachar, the early morning blessings. And you know something? Let's do them in English. Angliski, in English. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, enabling us to distinguish day from night. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, making me in the divine image. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, making me a Jew. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, making me free. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, giving sight to the blind. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, clothing the naked. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, releasing the bound. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, raising the downtrodden. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, creating the heavens and the earth. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, providing for all of our needs. I want to change that to the plural. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, guiding us on our path. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, strengthening the people Israel with courage. Courage. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, crowning the people Israel with glory. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, restoring vigor to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai lemelech haolam hanoten le'ayev koach. And at the bottom of the page, Udneinu hayom v'chol yom lechen lecheser rachmin b'einecha u'v'nei koreinu v'tigmelenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim lamo Yisrael. If you go down to page 66 at the bottom, Ashreinu. Ashreinu ma tov chalkenu ma na'im goreinu ma yafai roshatenu. Ashreinu shenachnu ma shkivim u'ma'arivim. ערב הבוקר ואומרים פעמיים בכל יום שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. On page 67 where the box is קדש את שמך על מקדישי שמך וקדש את שמך בעולמך וישועתך תרים ותגמיר קרננו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש את שמך ברבים. And we're going to then move dramatically ahead with God's sort of kind of permission. I'm going to move us to page 83, Baruch Sha'amar. Traditionally we rise, but if you'd like to stay seated with our multitudes of congregants here, please feel free to do so. Baruch Sha'amar v'haya olam Baruch hu. Baruch hu say v'reshit, Baruch omer v'osei. Baruch gozer mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mashalem shchar tov lechayav, Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch podeh u'motzil, Baruch shemo. יחיד חי העולמים מלך משובח ומפאר עד שמו הגדול ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מעולל בת תשבחות. And again we're going to move dramatically forward here today, and on page We're going to move to page 104, please. Nishmat kol chai. Nishmat kol chai, tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, v'ruach kol basar tivarech. Oh, there is a very beautiful verse here in English, actually. It's phrased so beautifully, both in the Hebrew and the English. And so that's in the middle of page 104, and Mark Davids, who's coming up soon, will, has talked about this. It is very beautiful. Let's read this here. Let's do it responsively. Page 104 in the left, in the middle. Could song fill our mouth as water fills the sea, and could joy flood our tongue like countless waves? Could our lips utter praise as limitless as the sky, and could our eyes match the splendor of the sun? Could we soar with arms like an eagle's wings and run with gentle grace as the swiftest deer? Never could we fully state our gratitude for 1/10,000th of the lasting love that is your precious blessing, dearest God, granted to our ancestors and to us. We continue here on page 105. האל ותעצומות עוזך הגדול ביכות שמך, גיבור לנצח ונורא בנורתך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. And we're going to continue. I'm going to confer with Mark here just 1 minute. Okay. At this time, I'd like to call upon Mark Davids to continue leading us in our Shacharit service with Shochen Ad. And just to sort of block a few things out here, I'm going to invite him to do the regular service until we come to Adon Olam. I'd like to skip that today and basically move things as quickly as we can to the Amidah and then go from there. Yasher Koach in advance. Thank you.
Shochen had maharon v'kadosh shemo v'katuv rananu tzadikim b'Adonai la'yesharim lavatechila v'fi yisharim titala v'divrei tzadikim titbarach v'v'shon chasadim titramam v'v'kerev kedoshim titkadash v'v'machalot v'vivar mechabed Yisrael v'ina yiveh shemcha makenu b'chador v'hador שכן כל הבת כל יצורים לפניך אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו להודות להלל להשבח לפאר לרומם להדר לברך להלל לקהלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו האל המלך הגדול הקדוש בשמיים ובארץ כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו שירוש שמך הלל וזמרה Ozu b'mshala netzach gedula gevurah, tila v'tifer kedusha malchut, mirachot v'hodot me'ata v'yad olam, baruch atah Adonai, el melech gadol b'tishbachot, el ha'hodot Adonai niflaot, habacher b'shirei zimra, melech elchei olamim. Yinkadal yitkadash merabah, v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chaychon v'mechanu chalech al beit Yisrael, Magalav izman karim v'imru amen. Yesh merava mevarach le'olam olam ma'yah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach yitbar v'yitron v'yaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalosh v'yitkedusha. B'rechu le'elam mikol b'chata v'shirata. Tufchata v'nechamata damiram v'yalma v'imru amen. We rise for Baruch Hu et Adonai ha'mavorach. Baruch Adonai ha'mavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer u'varei choshech, osei shalom, u'varei et hakol. Hakol yoducha v'chol yeshabechucha. We're in the middle of page 107. אין כחרון אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין תלתך מלכנו לחיי עולם הבא. אפס ביתך גאלנו למען המשיח, ואין מלך המושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון הכל המעשים, ברוך ומברך בפי כל נשמה, גדלו וטובו מלא עולם דעת ודבינה, סובבים אותו. המתגלה לחיר הקודש, ונדר בכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומשואלים לכיסו חסד, ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים ביורות שבר אלוהינו, יצורם בדעת בבינה ובהשכל, כוח וגבורה נטע בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נאה זיווה בכל העולם, שמחים בצאצם בששים בבואם, עושים בהמה רצון קונם. פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש ויזרח אורת, והתקין צורת הבנה. שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא מהרום, תפארת וגדולה, צרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש. לאל אשר שבת בכל המעשים. תברך משה אשר מעשה ידיך ויאמר אשר יפרוך זכרה. Our service continues at the top of page 110. תברך צבנו וכנו וגאלנו ברקע לשם יסתבח שגאלן מלכנו יעזב. כולם אוהבים, כולם ברורים, כולם גבורים, וכולם עושים בימה וירא רצון קונם. וכולם פותחים את פיכם מקדושה ותורה, ובשירה וזמרה, מברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים. את שם האל המלך, הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, הקדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם המלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצם בנחת רוח, בשפה ובנעמה קדושה, כולם כאחרונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך על הארץ כבודו. ואפנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול, מנסים למצרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך לימוד ייתנו. 3 lines up from the bottom of page 110. אור חדש הציון תאיר ונזכחו לנו מהרה לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני יוצא מהארון. Perfect. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול. סלע סלע באמת, להודו לכל ויחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר ביומו ישראל באהבה.
Amen. And now we have a continuing special treat here. We are going to invite Alice Foley to come forward here. Alice Foley is the distinguished granddaughter of Wayne Morris, our treasurer, and Alice studied the Shema and the Via Havta last evening. She learned in 7 minutes what sometimes takes other students, and Greg can verify from our class, sometimes 2 to 3 months. And she has done essentially the beginning framework in 7 to 10 minutes. So now we're just going to review that. Come right here, Alice. And we're first, you know the Shema by heart. So let's sing the Shema. You can look at the transliteration there, okay? But step right up to the mic here. There you go. I just cleaned it here. It's now sanitized. And go Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Baruch, amen. Sure. And then we can repeat, we do Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Good. And now we're going to sing the Via Havta. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just take your finger there and put it under every word as you go across. Okay? Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. I'm sorry. V'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha v'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shofecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot veitecha uv'isharecha. That was just beautiful. That was tremendous, Alice. Thank you so much. What a tremendous honor that was for us. Thank you. You can join your grandfather now very proudly. And for the sake of the, and you got a thumbs up from Greg Allman, who was in our Hebrew class, who understands what we were doing there in detail. And for the sake of our viewing audience on the internet, the hand signals that I was giving are actually very close in primitive fashion to the traditional way of doing that when people would be reading Torah. So, Merchat Tibcha, Munach et Nachta, Merchat Tibcha, end of the sentence, Sof Pasuk, and etc. We're going to call, let me go ahead and finish the Shema here, then we'll call upon Mark again. Let's go to the concluding phrase on page 113. L'ma'an tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedushim le'elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem eretz Mitzrayim lo lechem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet. And we'll call upon Mark again from page 113, Emet ve'atziv.
לדברך משמו קיים וחיסונך ומלכות ואמונות ועד קיים בדברים. אמת שעתו אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכינו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצאנו שהוא ישועתנו פתנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו ותהו מעולם. At the top of page 114. Tehilot le'el Elyon Baruch Hu Mevorach Moshe v'nei Yisrael achanu shira v'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha neda b'kodesh norati lo rosefele shira chadasha shivchu geulim l'shimcha safad chayam yachad kolam hodo ve'imlechu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam v'haed. We rise for Tzoi Yisrael. Tzoi Yisrael koma be'ezrat Yisrael u'v'dechenu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Ka Yisrael.
So we'll just do the silent Amidah facing the wall.
Oseh shalom b'ramav, Uyaseh shalom aleinu, V'yako Yisrael, V'imru imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu v'yako Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu v'yako Yisrael.
We want to thank Mark David so much here for his yeomanship here. He is a thespian. That is the word that I had tried to recall many times in the past for theatrics in theater, as an actor on stage. And as you know, the motto that they have on stage is, "The show must go on." So despite allergies and other little things that were going on, he heroically came through for us. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate that. So what I'd like to do this morning here now is just discuss a little bit about the Torah. I mentioned the Haftorah. Then we're going to go into a blessing for those who are ill. And we'll have, I know that Mark is saying Kaddish, and we may have some other people reciting Kaddish as well. So I wanted to focus on one particular aspect here today of our Torah portion. And as I indicated, last night we did speak about the Nazarite in our services there. But as I indicated and promised today, I would go into some depth here concerning the end of chapter 6, which is the priestly benediction. And actually, well, if you, I don't know if he's actually handed out the Chumashim, but he doesn't really have to. I can really, if people want to follow, they can too. Actually, that's, Dan may be going to get some. So while he's doing so, I'll sort of give a bit of a more detailed introduction to this. So this is tacked on really at the very end of the section dealing with Nazarites. Why it's tacked on here is exactly sort of a question of some mystery. But it's a commandment that the Lord spoke to Moses, instructing him to speak to Aaron, his brother, and his sons, saying, Ko tevarachu et b'nei Yisrael amor lahem. So this is the fashion, this is the way that you shall bless the people of Israel. And this threefold priestly benediction has historically been something of great importance. It's incorporated in many aspects in our liturgy. For the Shacharit and Musaf, it is included at the end. And in Israel, in point of fact, the Kohanim, the priests, actually get up and hold their hands like this. I'll explain, for those of you who were not here last night, I'll explain the formation of the hands like this once more. And then they cover themselves in the talit, and they chant this blessing. And it's a very beautiful blessing. And we're going to talk about the meaning of this blessing here in some detail in the next coming minutes. But they would be blessing. It was their responsibility to bless the congregation. Now, there was a little discussion amongst the rabbis. Are the priests really doing the blessing? Is the blessing and the hopefully the power thereof coming from the priests, or is it coming from God? Well, there's a division of opinion. Some say it's really coming directly from the priests. And that's why the text says that they shall be blessed. They shall be rewarded. Or another viewpoint is that they are reciting the text, the words, but the blessing is actually mediated through them from God. So it's really God who's doing the blessing. So you can look at it either way. Nonetheless, this is chanted, and it's very powerful, and it's incorporated not only into the Shacharit morning service and the Musaf service, but also whenever we have a bar or bat mitzvah, Or also when we have a wedding. It's incorporated and chanted by the rabbi or cantor. Well, it's chanted by the cantor, but if it's the rabbi who's officiating in both capacities, then it's chanted by the rabbi. But it's chanted during the wedding ceremony. And there are other times that it's even perhaps incorporated as well. So I'd like to invite you to turn to page 804. And we're just going to examine these 3 lines in lieu of some of the very extensive and excellent commentary that is found in the Eitz Chaim here. For your later study, for anyone who does have the Eitz Chaim, the commentary here actually begins on page 803 and then continues through 805 if you look both at the notes at the top and the bottom. But to make it a little simpler here, let's just look at one line at a time. And by the way, these blessings have a certain order and some mystical aspects to them. So I want to find and point out to you where I was reading here, where it talks about, talks about the number of words in each section. Well, I know it's in here. Here we go. If you'll look here, I'd like you to follow the commentary, page 804. On the bottom middle part there, not the gray part at the bottom, but on the bottom, on the left-hand side, above the section that says bless you in dark letters there, you have 5 lines above that. The blessing is structured in 3 lines, verses 24 through 26. Each slightly longer than the preceding one. So we're on, again, page 804 in the Hertz Chamushim. And the first one is 3 words. The second one, 5 words. Then 7 words. Note that those are all prime numbers. They're all odd prime numbers. This is not without coincidence. Because prime numbers, what is the other than being divisible by 1, or in essence by dividing themselves, correct? Like 7 divided by 7 is 1, okay. Or 7 divided by 1 is 7. But you're not going to divide 7 by 3 and have an even number. So what is the significance here? Let's sort of ask this question. What would you surmise could be the significance of having these verses each have prime numbers, 3, 5, 7, with the divine name, the name of God, recurring as the second word in each line? What would be the significance of that? If you want to make your own inner commentary or symbolism. Well, yes, Morris. Excuse me, Wayne. That's all correct. What do we say about God? Could we say the same thing? So therefore, the indivisibility of God is mirrored, paralleled, I would suggest. This is the Rabbi David Barnett commentary. The singularity of God, the indivisibility of God, the uniqueness of God is reflected in the inner symbolism of using the odd prime numbers, 3, 5, and 7, as the number of words in each verse. So that seems very apparent to me. It seems so apparent, actually, that it's obvious. But I haven't seen that in writing, actually. And so I'm going to call that the Rabbi David Barnett commentary for the moment. Yes, Wayne. Why did I use that term? Yes, because, of course, now Wayne asked the question for our internet audience, why did I use the term singularity? Now we have to remember, this is coming from a background because Wayne is a scientist and a physicist or a chemist and has a lot of scientific background. And chemistry is very related to physics in many levels. So he's asking this, I'm sure, from a perspective also of science, singularity, because that is also a scientific term and used in the modern circles of debate now, is that not? Yes. So your lovely granddaughter, Alice, helped chant the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That constitutes a singularity. And we have said that God is, as such, in this singularity, right? God is not divisible. We conceive God as an entirety, as a whole, not composed of separate, diverse parts, not divisible in itself. The God is one, and that's it. Our God is one God. You see, if it were divisible, then you would be coming very close to the Persian concept, when I say the ancient Persian concept of even then relating to Manichaeism, which was derived from the ancient Persian religion. And in that culture and religious structure, they really had a different system. It was two gods. It was two entities. One was good and entirely good, and the other was evil. And in their theological structure, the forces of those, you could say, of those powers, of those entities, was in perpetual conflict and struggle. And so one could say then that, and when you were in one camp of one God, the other was absolutely evil. So it doesn't matter if you were good or evil, but whatever camp you were in, the opposing camp was categorized as evil and not the way. And so things were split, they were bifurcated with no connecting pathway. It was absolutely one or the other. There was no middle ground. And in many ways, that's reflective, one could say, of our current social political condition, but that's all I'll say about that right now. But that would be referred to as the ancient Persian system, or later on its derivative called Manichaeism. So the Hebraic concept stands in stark contradistinction to that, where we proclaim the oneness, the singularity of one God, and as such, God is indivisible. And then you don't have that inner conflict. Now, as a side note, the philosophy of Taoism, you remember, if you ever seen some of the martial art symbols, you have a circle like this, and then you have a line that goes like this, and one is red and one is black. But within the red one, there's a little circle also of the black, and within the black one, there's a little circle of the red, saying that even within, if you were to contrast, there's not just only good and evil. There are many polarities that are involved in that symbolism, or that could be involved in that symbolism. But if you were to just look at it as a contrast between good and evil, you could say that even within the darkest evil, there's a little tiny remnant of good. And even within the most pure good, so, whether it be a person or an action or whatever, within the most pure good, there is a remnant and a reminder of a little bit of evil. And in the, you could say that, for example, in the Jewish tradition, we say that the soul that God has given us is pure. It's pure. But it's not maybe pure is pure. So it's very interesting. It's a philosophical debate. So pure maybe needs to be 100% pure, but we recognize that concomitant with the human condition, we have a little competing problem. And that is sometimes our ego, sometimes our selfishness, which is tied together with our egos, sometimes with our inclinations to be inconsiderate and not think of other people. So if we were to categorize, then sometimes to ignore the rights of anyone else except oneself, an extreme narcissism, like the 16-year-old who he had felony convictions and ran over a lady, targeted her specifically in a narrow alley, specifically aimed his car at her and her baby to kill them both, and was just let off with 5 months. So, but the point is that that was a deliberate act of evil. There's no it's on video. You can't question it. There was ample room. There was ample room for him to not only miss her, but to have the width of an entire car on the other side of the street. He deliberately accelerated and targeted here for whatever his reasons. I have to say, that's an example of evil. If that's not evil, please tell me what is. That extreme psychopathic, sociopathic hatred of another human being, a woman, a young woman, an attractive woman with her baby in a carriage, and she was on the side. She was against the wall, and she yelled out, and he still did that to her. If you did not see the videos of that, please talk to me afterwards, and I'll tell you what station you could find it on. I'm not going to mention that station now, but if you didn't see that video, I'm going to suggest we have an obligation to look at that video, and I'll say why. The reason why is to not acknowledge evil that exists is naive or just selfish. So we have to acknowledge the reality. That event happened. Now, the discussion around it and what happens to the young man and how it's handled in the system of the criminal justice system, as it, if you still call it that, as it exists in the Southern California area, particularly in the area of Los Angeles now, that's a matter that we cannot discuss here. That is a matter that we will not take a position on here. That is a matter that we will not derive or talk about any names. But to know that the event happened, we either in society have to take the viewpoint that either we pretend that we're all ostriches and hide our head in the sand, or we acknowledge it and then you interpret it. So, within that, it's hard to find. I'm very disturbed by seeing that video this week, I have to tell you. Within such a degree of evil, it's parallel to the things that you saw, the wanton killing of Jews in World War II, the movies you've seen them. You know, they're just machine gunning people down, right? The Nazis did it without compunction and actually with inner justification. It's so hard for me right now to find, if I'm thinking about the Chinese concept of the Tao and that little dot in that, where is the goodness in that? I don't know. I have to say that I can't answer that question. I don't know. I can't even suggest what element of goodness is in there. I just don't know. Other than the only thing that comes to mind when you contemplate that degree of evil on that scale, now referring to the Holocaust, is that it shows and teaches to what level of depth and depravity we as human beings are capable of descending into. That's the only thread of the tiniest sliver and glimpse of any type of enlightenment or goodness that I can find when I contemplate that level of evil. So I hope that I sort of went on a little bit, quite detailed there. I hope that answers your question there, Wayne. Very, very excellent question. We could sit around, because with your knowledge of the singularity as it applies to physics and chemistry, we could talk a lot about it for hours, but that would bring us off schedule. So let's continue that a little bit private more afterwards. Verse 24, the Lord shall, I'm going to say it in Hebrew first, and then give the interpretation. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. So, the rabbis have told us that this deals primarily with material things. As the first thought, it is not the only thought, by the way, but it can apply to material things, that God should bless you with material blessings, wealth, success, family, health, all of the good things that make a life complete, prosperity, meaningful work, meaningful relationships, everything that's good in life. That's what that can encompass. So it's actually not just material, it's also immaterial, immeasurable, but very valuable things as well. But relating to the material, v'yishmerecha. So Rabbi Pinchas Pelly said once in talking, he says in commentary to this, that there are a million ways to make money. But he said there are 1,000,001 ways to lose it. So this is an idea here on the material aspect that you should not only be able to make money, be able to keep it and enjoy it. Now, why do the rabbis even talk about material things and money? Isn't that a bad thing? Isn't that like dirty? Answer, from the Jewish perspective, no. It can be, actually, it's potentially very, very good. It can be used for evil. So money is really, you could say, parv. It's neither inherently good nor inherently evil. What distinguishes money, good money from bad money? Answer, I would suggest, the way it's used. What is it being used for? Is it being used for a good thing or a bad thing, very simply? Is it used for the fulfillment of a mitzvah or for an evil deed? I think Alice had a question. This is amazing, Alice. You are so wise for your age. Wait just a second, Alice. Hold your thought. Hold your next thought, because we have a listening audience who's not able to hear what you said. And I want the entire world, since this is going to be on YouTube, the entire world to know the wisdom that just came out of your mouth. It's a 10-year-old young lady. She said a good thing would be the buying of a Torah. Actually, that's one of the highest things, the highest uses that you can put money to. Why? Because the Torah will teach us the ways of life. And then, in turn, we learn everything about the way we should be. So that's very, very good. And Alice, continue, please. So Alice just said the Torah is basically our book of instructions. It tells us what to do. That's exactly correct. No rabbi could have said that more clearly or more brilliantly. Tremendous. There is an expression, out of the mouth of babes comes wisdom. You're not a baby anymore. You're a young lady, and very wise for your age, Alice. That this is, in essence, a book of instructions for an ideal civilization. That's the Jewish gift to the world. And that leads us to the second line. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Now, this is a very interesting line. Ya'er, there is a root in the word Ya'er. Now, Greg will tell us, well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to call upon Greg, put him on the spot. He knows the answer, though. Most words in Hebrew, as I've taught many, many times, have how many letters, Alice? How many letters are in the root of most words? 3. That's right. Sometimes they might have 2, and sometimes you'll have 4. Alice was paying attention last night to every single word, every sound. She didn't miss a trick. That's right. Now, here's something else to add to that, Alice. Often when it's 4, it's from a foreign language that's brought into Hebrew. Like telephone. Think of the sounds in the word telephone. 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 Right? 4 sounds. Telephone. Telephone. Right. So, letalfen is to dial someone in Hebrew. Letalfen. Let's practice that. Everyone say that. Letalfen. Very good. Now, what is the root? Since there are only 3 words in this is an easy one. Since there are only 3 letters in the word Ya'er, and the first letter, the Yud, is not a part of a root, but it's rather an indication of a future context. Therefore, there would be how many letters in the word Ya'er, how many letters to the root? And that would be, Alice, 2. That's right. Peace. 2. That's a little joke. Okay. So Ya'er comes from the root or, meaning light. Meaning light or to enlighten. So God should enlighten us through the brilliance of His countenance. Vichuneka. Now, the brilliance, there are a couple aspects of this. Choneka comes from the word chen, meaning grace, or grace, kindness, compassion. So we should be able to imbibe, we should be able to receive some of God's wisdom and have this idea of enlightenment, of getting wiser. There's an expression in English, I'm saying this primarily for Alice's benefit, to see the light. That means you understand something. You see, as if you're seeing it with your eyes clearly, except it's clear in your own thinking. It's clear in your own, that's why they say the expression, to see the light. It's as if the mind has an inner eye and is able to perceive these with clarity. What is not clarity of mental vision? It's the line of Khalil Gibran from the poetry, the beautiful poetry decades ago, right? Who talked about the person who was blind. You know, you can be blind, and the rabbis talk about this too. You can be blind in a physical way. You can't physically see. I couldn't physically see this cup. Couldn't physically see any of you. Or blind that is not realizing something in your thinking, in your mind, that should be mentally clear. So years ago, you remember Khalil Gibran, wonderful poet, what a gift, what a soul. Wow, in so many ways, I'd like a universal soul gift to humankind. His works were translated in over 70 languages. His most noted work was called The Prophet. If you remember, how many remember The Prophet? Right? Well, there was a line from The Prophet that talked about someone who was blind. And he said, like the blind man, stumbling between the darkness of his night and the obscurity of his day. The blind person can't see. Even the daytime is like nighttime. You might detect a little light, but it's all fuzzy and it's not clear, and I don't, you know, thank goodness I can't describe that to you exactly personally how that is, but, you know, they sometimes, I've read, you know, can sometimes perceive a little bit of light, but it's certainly still all fuzzied up in darkness. Or someone who has eye problems, severe cataracts, it becomes obscure, it becomes not clear. So in this verse we ask for clarity, mental clarity, and grace. What is the grace? To recognize from God compassion. We're not perfect. To have perhaps God overlook some of our sins and shortcomings. Which ties into the next one as well. So Yisa, the word Yisa, also has implication of basically granting, bestowing favor, sort of to turn one's head in one direction, or to grant a request. But it also implies a degree of forbearance, right? To lift someone up, to forbear, to have an attitude of forgiveness and patience and tolerance with them and on their behalf. And so it's we pray for God for that, to God for that. Really, actually, it's, instead of we praying to God for that, this is a blessing that God just gives us, right? That's the idea. We don't really even have to do anything specifically to receive that. It's a sign of God's love, which we said in the paragraph before the Shema. Ahava Rabbah, great love. So, to give you shalom. Now, what is the root of the word shalom? Let's call upon Greg for that. That's correct. That is exactly correct. Shin Lamed Mem, that was a good guess, because you just took out the Vav. That's very good. Does anyone know what that means? Well, in other words, Shin Lamed Mem, so Shalem, right? That root. Anybody know what that means? Shalem in Hebrew. Well, now you'll definitely learn something. Completion. So, Shalom is a state of completion, and that includes the common rendering of the understanding of the word peace, right? When you have peace, when you have calm, that's a state of completeness, right? You know, you don't need anything else in some ways. Was that a question, Alice? Oh, yes, okay, just sort of playing with your fingers. Good, very good. Yes, Wayne. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Okay, good question. Good question. Well, hold on. So let's pose it as a very good question to discuss in general terms, okay? In general terms. Let me repeat that, please, a third time. In general terms, right? On a value-based basis, right? So I have said it 3 times. It's a matter of eternal public record. Okay. But Wayne's question was, would not this concept of God's forbearance, in fact, be strong enough, I can paraphrase your question, and then I'll ask you if I'm doing it okay. Would that, in fact, not be strong enough to render almost an overlooking of the horrible, not an overlooking, or forgiveness? The example that I gave a few minutes ago about the event in Los Angeles. Okay, so would this line serve as an instruction for the people to be an inkling or a reason for forgiveness in that particular case? Okay. No, not necessarily. Well, now wait a minute. It doesn't say complete forgiveness. It doesn't use the word. Okay, so just a second. Now, I want to, for the sake of our, where are you exactly are you reading from? So I can. Okay. Above deal kindly in dark? Okay, so let's read this. We're going to read the commentary. Now, remember, this middle section is not the Torah. It's individual rabbis' opinions. What page are you on? At the top? Okay. Okay. Good. The root Hanan is used exclusively. This is on page 804 on the top. This top section then is the efforts of rabbis to understand what they call the pshat, the clearer meaning here. The definition of the pshat would be the way this verse would be interpreted in theory by the original generation in which the Torah itself was compiled for the original audience thousands of years ago. That's their effort to construe meaning from this. So we're defining our terms. The root Hanan is used exclusively in connection with divine mercy and grace. God's strict justice will be tempered by mercy. We'll come back to that. God will not judge the people according to their sins, but will deal kindly with them as a free gift. So God, let's just take that last sentence first, because it can be easily misconstrued. God will not judge the people according to, let's say, when we say in the high holidays, we add the word to the severity of their sins, but will deal kindly with them as a free gift. That does not mean that those particular sins are overlooked or ignored. That does not mean that they do not have consequences, because in the Jewish tradition, we have various values, and the various values are sometimes standing in, let us say, and this draws upon the work of a great rabbi who wrote a book on Jewish values. His name was Rabbi Max Kiddushin, and this was the essence of his rabbinate, and I have taken this to be extremely meaningful for myself. So the words that I'm going to say now are my own my own rendition of some of these basic concepts, okay? So I'm not quoting Rabbi Kiddushin now, but it's my understanding that these value concepts are sometimes in, well, let us call dynamic tension with each other. That no single value concept would be rendered as absolute. Because if you rendered it in an absolute way, then it would demote, or let's just say, not just demote, but sometimes eliminate to an extreme the presence of the others. For example, we commit, I'm going to use now, just go back, I'm going to stand on just firm, basic rabbinic ground. So let's say, I have to watch the time as well. I had promised a shorter service today. But let us say on Yom Kippur, so we commit many sins. We ask for God's forgiveness of these sins. But we recognize that some sins may be so severe that they're not able to be instantly forgiven during our lifetime. But we ask God nonetheless to have compassion on our souls and to have a degree of mercy there. Now, there is a degree here there is a primary distinction, which I'm going to draw attention to, right? And even before that, let me mention the other pillar that was referred to, which is the pillar of justice. So you have, and these are highlighted in Yom Kippur. We have what happens on Yom Kippur? We say that God, 364 days, this is metaphorically, right? 364 days is sitting on the throne of justice, strict justice. A life for a life, tooth for a tooth. Of course, that was mediated by the rabbis, but the point is, capital punishment, the equivalent, etc., and compassion, right? And there's that dynamic tension. But what happens on Yom Kippur? We ask God to move from the seat of justice to the seat of compassion. Now, there's a primary distinction. I think I'm going to leave it on this note because that could take us another 3 hours. But the distinction is, there is a primary distinction that the rabbis make that is impossible to overlook. And that basically inside it, Wayne will answer your question, or at least explore the question further about the near tragedy that happened in Los Angeles. And that, it was a near tragedy because the woman miraculously survived with minimal injury and the baby didn't get killed. And he was in a stroller. But there is a primary distinction, and that is mitzvot ben adam lemakom, u'mitzvot ben adam lechavero, which translates as sins between us and God. In other words, if you don't light Sabbath candles, is God going to kill you for that, right? Is God going to take your life through a traffic accident because you forgot to say the blessing over candles, or you didn't say the blessing after a meal, or you forgot to say Hamotzi, or you didn't wrap tefillin day 322 after you had done it for 321 days previously? Is God going to strike you down with lightning because of that? Would that be a divine punishment? That's a sin. That would be a sin between ourselves and God. Or sins between other people. Now, Jewish law clearly and categorically states, without question, that if you sin towards another person, you have to do there's a 5-step process, right? And you have to make restitution to that person and ask forgiveness and ask their forgiveness and resolve to do it. And only then, after you've done all those 5 steps, could God possibly forgive you. God's forgiveness does not come until you've done those things. So the answer actually to your question is a direct, clear, and unequivocal no. Why? Because we have no record, it's happened very recently, of this 16-year-old even begin to express any statement. Of course, he's not able to maybe at the moment, but we have no record of any contrition at all, let alone apology to this person, let alone restitution. This is called, I'm not an attorney, right? But the event that happened it's a felony that their discussion was only what level of felony. But at the very least, it would be considered reckless endangerment, right? What value for lifelong trauma do you restitute, do you give to a person for that? And that's on a civil level, not a criminal level. So the answer to your question is a clear, and it wasn't clear until I got to this point in my remarks. I wasn't able to answer your question with as degree of confidence as I can now. From a rabbinic perspective, I don't care if you're a Reform rabbi, I'll debate them till the end of the day. I don't care if you're a conservative rabbi, I don't care if you're an Orthodox rabbi. The Orthodox rabbi would absolutely, all of them would absolutely agree that it has to be. There is no rabbi that would be properly ordained. This is a big statement I'm going to make. This is a huge statement. I will go on record with it. There is no rabbi who would be duly ordained who could properly say that the answer to that question could be a yes, or even an automatic yes, or even a possible yes, without the degrees of tshuva and restitution that our tradition calls for. And therefore, as it stands with the knowledge we have now, the answer to your question would be a clear and unequivocal no. Das ist das. Because there is, you asked to see from a divine perspective. And so all I can answer is the rabbinic understanding of what God would say. If our discussion is what God would feel, how forgiving is God, we don't know. So we could, to be continued. TBC with that, before I get totally hoarse. Here's my water. The Haftarah dealt with, as I mentioned yesterday as well in my sermon, the events of Samson and the concept of his life as it reflected the Nazirite vows, which we won't be chanting today, but refer to it. But for this time, so that we can be complete here in terms of what I promised earlier, let's turn to the back of the Siddur and have a blessing for those who are ill. I'm, in the interest of time here, I'm just going to read the names that we have and then ask you to give your own names in addition here. And with a prayer, I will say the Hebrew, Mishiberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu, and also the other reverse, Mishiberach Imotenu, those who bless our mothers, Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu Shtititen Refuah Shlema, should give a complete healing. Refuata Nefesh, which is body, we're actually soul and body, Haguf is body, Val Nefesh is spirit, and we can all say Amen. We pray for healing then for Barbara Allman, Steve Asheim, Mana Bachov, Sawyer Bartell, Teresa Calla, Emilia Cooley, Audrey Dash, Gordon Feinberg, Pearl Friedman, Bob Gamson, Renee Jin, Carla Gonzalez, Jeffrey Greenwald, Eve Homburger, Alan Jacobs, Rita Kindle, Keith Langston, Steve Lifshin, Robert Maya, Sandy Minkin, Morris Rashi, Ron Rosenberg, Dom Solfi, Rob Seltzer, Harleen Schreck, Leslie Schulsinger, Daniel Siegel, Izzy Sigmund, Saul Stein, Andrea Diane Sylvester, Bill Thompson, Peter Teitelbaum, Nancy Town, Albert Warman, Herb Weissman, Suzette Weissman, Katerina Williams, Liebel ben Margolit, Liebe Shlomit Rachel bat Margolit, Feivel Shlomo ben Devorah, Yisrael ben Etel, Avram ben Binyamin. Let's start with the back. On this side, Tom, Mark, anyone else? Yes, do you have someone to ask for healing for your mother? Yes, Mrs. Foley, what's her first name again? Your mother's name? Dion, okay. And is she your daughter, Wayne? Do you know her Hebrew name? Dion, for Dion. Well, God will know. Anyone else here? Okay, Jeff in back. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Osvaldo? Okay, thank you so much. And Greg? Okay, good. And Yehuda ben Sion, Yehuda Tzvi ben Sion, Devorah Sarah bat Josefina, Rachel Sarah bat Leah. Any others? Okay. Now, let's continue with our service here. We will do the Kedusha form I promised here for Musaf. That will continue on page... Well, I will do the Chatzi Kaddish, page 155. יתקדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמד יברח ירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה, ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. Page 156b, we'll rise and face our eastern wall. Adonai Svatai tiftachu fi yagid telatecha. Actually, I'll go back and do the first line. Ki Shem Adonai ekra, havu godel Eloheinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu. Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov. Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, האל עליון, גומר חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו ביעבר, מלך עוזר ופוקד, ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך במית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. Page 157. נריצך ונקיסך. נריצה ונדגישה כזאת שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך. וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומו יבין ברחמים, ויחונם יחידים שמו ערב הבוקר, בכל יום תמיד. פעמיים יבוא, שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו שנית, שנית לעיני כל חי, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ודברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך הדור הקדוש, אתה ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. We continue through the remainder of the Musaf Amidah for Shabbat, and that would be through page 161. If you're completing the Amidah, please feel free to continue to do so. The rabbis tell us, Shir L'Adonai Shir Hadash. You're always supposed to sing a new song to God. Your worship is not always supposed to be exactly the same. So, in lieu of concluding our Amidah here with Osei Shalom, I'd like to suggest we'll turn to page 159, and on this Shabbat, sing Yismechu. And I'll try and lead us to the best that I can at this instant in that. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mikadeshei Mikadeshei Shvi Shabbat Kulam yisbe'u v'tangu mituvecha Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat V'ashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Chemdat yamim Oto karata lezecher lemasei v'reishit Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. And we continue then with the Reader's Kaddish, which should be found close to page 181. And I think we could go even use the word exact for that. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemirabah בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחי יכון ויומכון וחי את כל בית ישראל והגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן אמן יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ותעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו לעלמין כל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן אמן תתקבל סלותכון ובתכון לכל ישראל קדם אבון דבישמיא ואמרו אמן אמן יהי שלום רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן אמן. Please rise for Aleinu, page 183. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשינו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שונתי שמיים כי המלכות שלך היא ולמיד תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. And please be seated. It's usually been my custom that if we have someone who's present, who is observing a yahrzeit for a beloved family member, I at least will offer them the opportunity to maybe share a thought or word about the deceased person, their beloved, in such a way that is not a recapitulation of an entire eulogy, but nonetheless might be a thought or a vert, something of inspiration about their life that remains meaningful and hopefully an inspiration to us as well. So Going on the list that Lois gave me here this week, we have first Henry Davison, father of Alan Davison. And then we have Louis, did he say Louis or Louis? How do you pronounce his name? Okay, well, I'm going to say Louis Cornick, but maybe Louis. I had an Uncle Louis. Yitzchak Leib. Wonderful, Yitzchak Leib. Okay, grandfather of Mark Davids. So, would you like to say anything about him, Mark? I'm sorry? Okay, so let me, okay, I'm going to share that for our listening audience. In Yiddish, the ending nix means like nothing, and they weren't sure if his last name had an S on it or not. They decided to eliminate the S and make it Cornick. Anything else you'd like to say about him, though? Did you have a chance to know him? Okay. He was a tinsmith by profession. Oh. Wow, and Mark still has some of the remaining tools that he used. I want to tell you that the tefillin covers that I have are made out of, I believe, tin. So a tinsmith, there was, you know, very, because tin is made in sheets often and able to be bent and molded, and so that's a very valuable skill. That's tremendous. Well, without anyone else, first of all, anyone else observing a yortzeit on this Shabbat. In that event, without further ado, we're going to slow it down for the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, page 184, and so Alice can learn to follow. The important words to know, it's in English on the left-hand side. You can put your finger under every word as we say it, Alice. Yitkadal v'yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei techol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lemei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach. V'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal. Shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran v'alma v'yimru. And everyone should say Amen. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Wonderful. Well, I would just like to take a rabbinic liberty to say some words of appreciation here at this moment. This is, as many of you know, the last Shabbat during this period of my service with Congregation Beth Am, and all. I hope that you never know. We never want to burn bridges, and the Hebrew word for goodbye is not just it's not as I shared last night. We don't say sayonara like the Japanese. Like it's like a sword cutting off your head. We don't say sayonara. We don't have that in Hebrew. We have shalom. Or that's just sort of like, that can be, for well-being, shalom, you can say that maybe if you're, it can be said anytime, but it's certainly not like farewell, like the English, although that's still like be well. It's not, it's not the Japanese sayonara, but in Hebrew, the most common one is lihitraot, until we see each other again. The reflexive verb beginning with the heat for the Hebrew students. Nonetheless, it has been an honor and a distinction for me to serve here as your rabbi, as the rabbi of Congregation Beth Am here in Longwood, Florida. To be honest, I had never heard of Longwood, Florida before. I hadn't even heard of St. Mary's, And so I learned about that really quickly. I want to thank Dan so much for working with me and teaching me many important life lessons, which I was even thinking of you this morning, Dan. I know I'll think of you in many positive and strong ways in the future. And appreciate everything. A president's life is not, of course, he co-chaired, for the record. I'm not forgetting Joni. I thanked Joni first last night. He co-chaired the presidency with Joni. But a president's job is never easy. Sometimes you have to know when to be, like Wayne was saying, when are you compassionate? When do you have to be, towing the line? It's all part of the same thing. It fits together. And I'm grateful. I really am. I am grateful for all of it. And I appreciate that. And we learn from everything. We're supposed to learn, as I did say last night, from every person. Mikol melamdai iskalti. That's from Pirkei Avot. And I truly have learned and appreciated learning and discussing and having interactions with each and every one of you. I will certainly miss you. I wish you, as the rabbis say, when we have a bar or bat mitzvah, we say to the bar or bat mitzvah, we say michayil l'chayil, from strength to strength, and we certainly appreciate that and wish you from strength to strength as a congregation. And I hope that some of the things that I was able to share with you hope to even hopefully clarify some of your paths to the future. Tom, as the new president, it's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you for your dignity and for your respect also for the position of the rabbi. You've always demonstrated that publicly and privately, and it's greatly appreciated. And Osvaldo is here with us on this Shabbat as the new ritual chair. It's been a pleasure working with you as well. Before you came on, I was working intensively with Mark Davids during the high holidays. I remember his theatrical rendition of Jonah. It was so good. Oh my gosh, am I going to miss that in the future? It was a pleasure working with Mark so much on high holidays, working things out, receiving his counsel. I'm thinking back on that time, and Mark, sincerely, I thank you so much. I thank you many times privately, but this time it goes for Le'olam va'ed, for eternity, on the internet as a matter of record with YouTube. It was such a pleasure working with you. Your inspiration was so helpful to me, and your words of encouragement in the process, which was, we can say, it was a time of stepping up to the plate, and so I did the best we could. And I really want to thank all of you here, each and every one of you. And last but not least, we have an expression in Hebrew. We say Aharon, Aharon Haviv, which means last, but it doesn't mean it's not the least important. It could be actually the most important. And Alice, I'm just going to speak for myself. I can't speak. The rabbi's not always supposed to speak on behalf of the congregation. That's a very tricky thing. So I'm just going to speak on behalf of myself, Rabbi David Barnett. Alice, you were wonderful. It was such a joy for me to hear your young voice here saying Amen, even in the words of the Kaddish, and leading us in the Shema and the V'ahavta, which she learned in 7 minutes prior to the service last night, approximately 7 minutes. Maybe Tom, I'm just making a joke now, maybe Tom would say it was 8 or 9, I don't know, I think it was closer to 7. But the fact is that she did it Greg, would you not agree? She was intoning the correct trope. She learned in 7 minutes what takes people 2 and 3 months sometimes. Is that correct? Okay, Greg Allman, we're going to call him an elder of the congregation, has given his agreement to that. So Alice, keep up your wonderful things, and you have many, many talents. You're so special, and we appreciate your participation in addition to our services last night and this morning. And with that, I'm going to call upon Tom for his concluding announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Barnett, so much for leading us in services today and leading us in services all year long. With your musical Shabbats, with your teaching us the Bar Torahs, with your Hebrew class, which I was a part of, with the strategic planning you did for us. All of that has enriched us so much spiritually and beyond. We thank you so much for it. We wish you very well in future endeavors, good health, and we would definitely stay in touch with each other so we can keep track of each other, but we appreciate it very much. Thank you. On June 23rd, it's a Thursday, the movie chat group will be meeting live at Bahama Breeze here in Altamont Springs. They will do lunch first at 2:30 and to discuss the movie for that week. Also, Beth Am summer raffle is going on now. You all got tickets in the mail. You can buy them yourself, you can sell them, or you can give them as a gift, but it goes on until July 29th. The tickets are only $10 each, and it's a $500 gift certificate you could possibly win. Also, Beth Am is going to the theater again. On July 31st, we'll be going to the Garden Theater in Winter Garden again to see On Your Feet. It's always a lot of fun when we do a play, and very, very good afternoon. Please plan to attend that. Shabbat Shalom.
I just want to personally give a big thank you to Tom Mayer there for his very additional kind words there, and say how much it means to me, and it means a tremendous amount, Tom. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And for the record, that service at the home of Morris and Sheila Rashi was not able to be televised and filmed that night, but Tom, I also speak very appreciatively and very comprehensively, really, of the things that I had done that evening. And so that this is a matter of record, I really would like to thank you again so sincerely for that. And in previous situations where there were children and beneath the age of a bar and bat mitzvah, or even if they were after a bar and bat mitzvah, and I would bring them up to the bima all the time for Adon Olam. So Alice, we're so happy to have you here, and Alice has agreed to come up here. Basically, you can just sort of sing along. You'll get the melody. That's how it's going to go. And we're going to begin with Adon Olam. So just follow every word, and word by word, you'll learn it. And then after you've heard it 100, 200, 300 times, guess what? It's going to be such a part of you. Actually, you'll learn it after 20 times. But yes, absolutely. 20, 30, 50 times. You won't need, but it's always good. And many of the people here have done this hundreds of times in their lifetime. Maybe not to this particular melody, though. So here we go. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Leit Nasa V'chevtzo Kol Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam V'yacharei Kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora Adon Olam vehu haya vehu hove vehu iye b'tifara Adon Olam. Back to the chorus. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasam v'chevtzo kol Hazai melech shemot nikra Adon Olam vehu echad ve'ein sheni lehamshilo lehachbira Adon Olam bili reshit bili tachlit velo haoz ve'hamisra Adon Olam. Going on. Vehu eli v'chai go'ali V'tzur havli be'et zara Adon Olam V'hu nisi humanos li Menat kosi b'yom ekra Adon Olam B'yado Avkid ruchi Bet ishan ve'aira Adon Olam V'im ruchi, with my spirit, Giviati Adonai li, God is to me, velo ira, and I will fear him. Adon, or I'll have no fear. Adon Olam, back to the chorus. Adon Olam, asher malach, b'terem kol, yitzir nivra, leit asa, v'chevtzo kol, hazai melech Thank you. Thank you so much. Excuse me. And thank you all again. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Hey, you said to everyone again.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Beautiful. And let me see how I turn this off. How do I turn this? There's a red button down here. And I think what I do.
I'm pretty sure you pressed that.
Oh, no. It's that one. It's this one down here. And I'll show you. Watch. It's going to light up there. See that? It's going to light up.
Up.
Now it's off. Excuse me. Wait a minute.
I don't think it's off.